Good morning everyone, welcome to my channel. Okay, I just wanted to update you on my progress with the Anne Brooks 52 tags journal. So this is going to be the journal that I place all my tags in so that they're nice and safe and they're not out in the dust and getting damaged. So I really wanted to create a journal to hold them all. Now, in the first video, went through all my measurements. I'd found a book and measured the cover and then worked out how big the pieces of fabric needed to be to create the pages, which then the tags would attach to. Now I've made heaps and heaps of decisions, so I thought I'll turn on the camera and I'll show you at what stage I'm at. Now, as for the cover, I was umming and ahhing about this beautiful old Shakespeare book. It is very, very old. It's from the 1800s and I've had a little while and I never knew what I was going to do with it. I had planned on just doing a nice spine for it because that was all damaged. But I just never got around to it. So, for some reason, I just didn't think that that was the right way to go for it. So I've made the big decision to separate the cover from the rest of the book. Now it's very old and bowed. It looks like it's had some water damage in its time, but I don't think that really matters because I think it'll make a great, interesting cover for all my needlework. So I'm pretty pleased that I'm going to be using that. And of course, my measurements are all based on this cover. I did think I was going to create my own or find another book, but I don't need to. I'm going to use this particular cover. So that's first decision made. Now, the inside of the book, the layout of the pages, has changed a little bit due to the thicknesses that have come after all of my embroidery on these particular pages. So I'll show you as we go through. So a little bit of a change on the layout, but similar. Okay, so we measured out and tore the 4 pages. I've then gone ahead and started to embellish them. I decided to use lots and lots of doilies. Now, none of these doilies are super old. They're all from the 90s and the 80s, mass-produced. I don't think there's any in here that are true treasures. Maybe one that Grandma may have added a crocheted edge to, but even then I'm not real sure. So got plenty of them and I use them really easily in crafts. They sort of don't hold any sentimental value. So I've started placing them out and then pinning them into position. When I'm happy with the position, I've then come along with a thread and slow stitch them down. Just a little tacking stitch, not to be seen, to hold them all into position. It took hours, as you can imagine. By the time you go around the outside of a doily and then come in, say, 1 centimetre or 2, and then go around the inside of it to make sure it's nice and strong, and even a couple stitches in the centre. It did take its time, but I'm really happy with the way they came together. I just used normal cotton. This is not, of course, the cotton, but just sewing machine cotton in a cream to slow stitch them all down. So well worth the effort now that they're all down. So I'll just show you the pages so far. I also added to the back of them some felt. I just felt like the pages needed a little bit of rigidity. I want them to feel quite substantial as I turn the book pages. So, and it also just helps with that nice feeling of lusciousness. So it's just felt. It's not the felt you buy a little square at the craft shop. I actually got this felt from Spotlight, similar to Michael's in the US. It is by the meter. So it's just that little bit thicker and denser and not as pilly as the craft felt. Sometimes the craft felt has like I don't know, what's the word? It's not metal, but when you slide your needle through it, it feels like you're going through something scratchy. So I think it's a really synthetic based harsh product, where this felt is something you would put inside a blanket or something like that. So it feels a little bit more like wool than the cheaper felts. Anyway, I digress. So each piece has had a panel of felt put on them. you'll see a blue line here. That'll come into play a little bit more, but that is the exact middle of this piece. So when I line up the edges, I slid my ruler in to the piece, pushing it as hard and fast as I could into the edge there. And then when I opened it up, I had a line to show me the middle and then drew that line. Okay, so that will be needed shortly when we put these in on the spine. So that's what the blue line's about. And looking at that, my blue line doesn't look real straight. Let me just try that again and double check it, because I'm stitching these pages into a piece of fabric like a floating spine. Yeah, that's a little bit out. So I'm just going to redo that line while we're here, and I've just spotted it. Doesn't have to be exact because it is a fabric journal, so there's a lot of give and stretch and take with fabric. Okay, so that's the first page with some doilies on it. And you'll see I've pinned already the little post-it notes that tell me what numbers of tags will fit on the page. So 25 through to 36 per page. So that's 12 in total on this panel. I'll just show you some of the other panels. Okay, this is the next one. So this one had the beautiful big round doily. I actually had two of those, and this little guy, I had two of those as well. So the other couple panels have incorporated them in them as well. And then just pop some of these additional little pieces. These little pieces, I have just so many of them, because if I find at an op shop or even just online somewhere a big crocheted tablecloth, they're all machine made from the 90s. I cut them up, and that gives me these motifs of varying sizes. Sometimes they're out of little doilies, tablecloths. This one here was part of a pillow set. So one of the big retailers must have done a heap of pillowcases with crocheted component to the top of the pillow. So I love that one because it's quite a rigid looking doily piece. So it's just a case of keeping your eyes open for some of these elements, and then I use them everywhere. Okay, so that's the second one. And of course the felt on the back. I did do some slow stitch as well, using just a golden coloured crochet cotton. I believe this is a number 5 in the thickness, so it's not as fine as you can get, like an 8. It's getting a little thicker. So this colour is wheat, and it's 735 if there's anyone wanting to find a beautiful golden coloured thread. I'd highly recommend that, and I've got it in a few different sizes because you just never know how you're going to use it, but it's just one of those great colours to work in with creams and beiges. And what I did is just popped a few little stitches around the edge of the doily just to highlight that edge. Now, they won't technically be really seen because it'll be full of tags, but I really enjoyed the process. And it's just created something interesting underneath the tags. Okay, so that's number 2. And number 3, this one's got quite a few pieces on it. Some really classic 90s doilies where they were pressed out of fabrics and then machine stitched by big sewing machines. I just think they're gorgeous, even though they're not exactly old, but you know, they're nice. That one there, I did a little bit of slow stitch around the rectangle or the square in the center of this doily, and then placed one of those scrappy motifs on the top. Okay, that there is a piece that I didn't fully separate. I use this one all the time, and even the little ones, but this is an example of what they are joined together to make a table runner or something, and then I just, you know, split them all apart. But I've got a heap where I've left them in this shape. It's just an interesting shape that I use occasionally. I can always separate it if it's needed. Okay, so that's number 3. Now number 4 is a little bit more advanced because it'll show you where I'm heading and the process that I plan to use for my journal. Okay, so let me just get this So what you're going to have to do is pretend that you can't see this for a moment. So I'm just going to roll it up in the center. That's the spine. That's what everything's going to be stitched into. But that is the fourth panel. Underneath it all is the doilies. So as I said, you can't see the doilies to any great degree, but they do add a element of interest to the background. So I've got little bits poking out the top and little edges. So, you know, at the end of the day, I know they're there, and if I want to have a look at them, I can just lift the tag and have a little peek. So the next thing I want to show you is a couple more decisions I made. The biggest thing is, how do you get your tags to stay on the page that as you turn through the book, they don't flip-flop everywhere, because it's only going to damage them. So I've thought about it, and I've decided on my two methods. I'm going to be using Velcro dots and also these safety pins. They're collarless safety pins. So the standard safety pin, if I bring that up to the camera, has a little curly bit down the bottom here, which we all know, but this one is more like an old-fashioned one. I believe this company is in England, and they're reproducing some of these old classic haberdashery pieces, and have got like this boutique range of goodies, from pins and needles to all sorts of things. You will have to find a supplier or a retail outlet in your state. I don't think you can buy direct from them. If you can, you would be looking at some freight to get them, you know, to Australia if you're an Aussie girl. I found these at a sewing shop actually in Ipswich. They were online. I just typed in the brand name there, and up come this website connected to an Ipswich sewing shop, and bought a few of the bits and pieces just to have a little look at them. So what I got, I think this box is of 100. It was $13. So what they are a dark brown pin. Okay, so I sort of felt like they fit with the style of the book, the old Shakespearean cover. So an old garment pin. So all I did was pin them into position. So you can see them there all pinned down, trying to get them as level as I could. Then I went through with some Velcro dots and found a spot on the tag that the Velcro dot could sit without being, I'm just going to undo this one, could sit without affecting the artwork that's on the back. So most of my tags have the date and a little bit of a snippety thing that is connected to the front. So they are quite decorative in themselves. So it was tricky to find the spot for a Velcro spot to sit. So sometimes they're in the corner, sometimes they're high like this, sometimes over to the side. So, you know, each one was different, which I don't think really matters. As I applied the dot, I took them out of the case. Actually, here's some here that weren't used. I took them out of the little case and I attached them together. So they're now a single unit. And then when I peeled it off of the plastic, before I applied it to the back of the tag, I added some art glitter glue to one side. Now that side is the one that goes to the tag. Because these tags are fabric, cardboard and paper, I felt that I needed just that little extra glue from the art glitter glue just to make sure it really stuck to the tag. Some of the tags I've put snippets of really old paper, like something out of a 1800s book, and before that glue was dry, it tore off because that paper is already weak. So allow everything to dry, especially if you've got some special paper on the back. But this one, for example, is just cardstock, so it's at least a firm paper to start with. So the tags now have their dots stuck on them, and then I turned it over and they found their home on the fabric. Then the other sticky side just found a spot and down it went. But that is not enough to stay on fabric. These are designed for paper, maybe a painted surface, but it does say in there that the surface needs to be very smooth for it to adhere to. So that is not fabric. It is not smooth, especially lace. So to make sure that this tag stayed, I then got a needle and thread and just put 2 stitches in that tag center so it's not going anywhere. And to be careful with sort of detaching them and looking, just slide your finger in there and put a little bit of pressure on the bottom tag and a little bit pressure on the top tag, and then ease it off. It's certainly not going to be one of those pieces where you can just go rip and the tag is off of the back and then, you know, remove it. So if anyone is looking at your book and wants to have a read of the back, they will need to be a little bit precious, because I trust the tag on the book because I've stitched it. I just don't trust this tag. It's holding okay, but yeah, luckily it's not going to be something that I will look at every day. So I think it will do the job. And that pretty much has made them completely stable. They are not flipping and flopping anywhere, which, like I said, will damage them. So I'm happy with that process. Now, we were going to follow the steps of joining these pages together from the first video. That has changed a little. What I've found is these have become quite thick, and if I was to layer them all on top of each other, the 4 of them, fold them in half, thinking that that's going to be one signature into the spine, I was kidding myself. It was huge. It was that thick, and as it curved over to fold, all the pages pulled in a little bit, so there was no way I was ever going to line them up to seam them, to stitch them closed. So I had to rethink that a little bit. And what I've decided to do is, I'll bring back one of these others just to show you. This is where the blue line comes in. What I've decided to do is each panel will be its own signature, because it's, even with the tags, it is still thin enough to fold it over and stitch around that perimeter to join it, and that is going to be one signature. So now I'm only dealing with a little narrow edge, which will be perfect. That does mean, however, we have 4 signatures in this journal instead of the 1, which is what I was thinking I could do in the first video. So I'm breaking the pages apart to create 4. Now, the trick to do this is I sort of need to get the tags on, because I'm stitching the velcro down, so I do need my hand to have access to the back. You could do it, but because there's glue on the little velcro tab, I've noticed that my pin going through picks up that glue and becomes quite sticky. You'll never know, because this is not Feel-O-Vision TV, but that is just coated in the glue as I've had to force it through that tag and then pull it back up and then again and again to get a little knot so that I know it's secure. So I do need to do quite a lot of work before I can close the book. And that also includes stitching it into a spine or a piece of fabric that's going to be the start of the spine. So that sort of had me thinking about my book. I couldn't do the classic create the cover with a beautiful spine and then stitch it in, because to get all that under a sewing machine was just not going to happen, especially a rigid cover like that book. So I have to do a hidden spine, and that I will show you in a moment. So let's just go back a second. We've got our panels completed. Then go ahead and attach all your tags. Just be careful that you don't get too close to the halfway line. This one was a bit tricky because it had this lace on the side of the tag. So as I stitched it onto this spine fabric, this potentially could have got caught in my sewing machine. So I just had to take my time and just run the sewing machine down, hoping that that didn't get caught. I tucked it under a little bit so that it was, you know, well and truly out of the way. It might mean you swap a couple tags. At the end of the day, I know that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Well, actually, it's not. It's the next 6. It doesn't matter if a couple are spun around. You're the only one that knows. And if it means that some fringing or some lace stays out of the spine when you stitch it in, it's probably not a bad idea. That was a lesson learnt when I did the next process. So as I was saying, once you've stitched your doilies in, add all of your tags, keeping them away from the middle as much as you can. At least, you know, 1/2 inch would be good. And if you followed my measurements, you've got the room to do so. And that way you can clearly run the sewing machine down there. And I did use my sewing machine. I was going to hand stitch it, but I just want it to be strong and not be all flippy floppy. So I did use my sewing machine. You could still hand sew it. Okay, so that's now decorated. I'm now to the stage where I want to stitch this piece with all the tags on onto my little panel that is going to start the spine. Now, I'll give you some measurements of what I'm using. This piece of fabric is 8.5 by, I need the tape measure because it's taller than my ruler. Now the height is extra above my book, so it will be trimmed, but it was just the size of the fabric, so I thought I'll leave it at that. I'm using a piece of fabric that is 13.5 inches tall. Now our height of our book is only 11.5 inches, so you can see there is this excess at the top, which I'll trim when I need to, but at the moment it can stay there. So this piece of fabric that we've got, I'll just show you that first. So let's pretend now that you're not looking at the signature, you're just looking at the fabric. So I've got some markings on here. I've come across the width of the fabric and I've decided to put 1 inch of space between each signature. So the first thing I did was I found the middle and marked it with my pen. I then went 5 inches, 6 inches, marked it, 3 inches, 2 inches, and marked it. Now that gives you 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 dots. I did it at the top, the middle, a little bit further down, and again, you can do it even more. You could even draw in your lines if so needed, but that was enough for me. Now, we only have 4 pages, but I have 5 marks. Now, when we first nutted out this book, we had some creative inserts. I really want to put some stitchery in amongst this, incorporating some of my favorite things that I learnt from some of these tags. So as you flip through, there'll be these pages of embroidery in amongst it. And because I've changed the design a little, I didn't have as much opportunity to do the creative inserts because I technically lost 2 opportunities. I still have the inside cover and the outside cover, or the insides of the 2 covers. That's 2. I have the cover, and I also have now created a spot in the center. So my plan is to have 1 signature full of tags, the second signature full of tags. Then I'm going to skip the middle dots, and that is going to be a page of embroidery I can add at some point. Then my 3rd and my 4th. So that is going to be how my pages are going to go on my spine. Okay, so now where am I? I then found the middle of my page and lined it up with the dots. It's a bit tricky, but if you take your time using a ruler to keep a nice straight edge in there, you can jiggle your fabric until you're confident that all your little red dots are seen and are ready, lined up. And then with that ruler in there, you can also check that your edge over here is nice and straight, because that is going to be stitched together or stitched closed to hide all of the inside. So when you're happy that everything is sitting where it should be, it is then just a case of popping some pins through here, and use a lot of them because you don't want it to wriggle. And then take it to your sewing machine and, starting at the top, run a line down. As simple as that. Well, it's fiddly, but it is simple. And then that one is in. So let's pretend that this one is the next one. And we're going to put the ruler in there just to double check that it is exactly half. I do have a line there already. Let's just check it. Yeah, I'm happy with that. All right, so the ruler's in there. Everything's nice and flat. Then we're bringing it over to the dots. And we're going to lay the ruler, which gives you that nice rigid edge in there, on the line. And you're just going to fiddle for a moment to make sure that you can see your little dots. Everything is nice and straight. The edges on the perimeter line up. If you're happy that that's sitting nicely, carefully open up the signature and using some pins, just start securing things down. So for example, I'm putting a few random pins out here on the side, so that'll stop it from swizzling. And then I'm pinning through the center here as well. So I'll just do that. Now, like I mentioned before, this will be full of tags. So just make sure that you're not catching any of your tags in your sewing line, because that would be a shame to have to unpick the fabric after having caught your tag artwork. Okay, so that now is nice and secure. It's not going anywhere. It's ready to sit under the sewing machine. You could even add a few extra pins at the top and bottom just to hold everything into position. So before you go, double check that you're nice and close to your dots and that your space is an inch. Yep. Okay, and that your side seam over here will marry up beautifully. Okay, so that's now ready to go into your sewing machine and stitch straight down there. And then you've attached your next signature, which technically is a one-page signature. Okay, so once that's into position, of course, then go ahead and do the rest. So you will have 4 more to add, folding them in half, using your ruler, make sure everything lines up. Take your time with this process. If you rush it and it's a little bit skew with, it'll be such a shame because it just won't be right. I'm just going to remove these few pins here and we'll pretend that that's now stitched, and then I can come through and close off the page so it's ready to go. Then I can come back again and we're going to skip this one and we're going to then add in the next. Now, I think because I've allowed an inch, I will have enough room to come back and stitch in this. I'm going to say that out aloud and I hope it's correct. Let me just grab some fabric. I haven't yet created this page. So the last thing I want to do is actually continue on having not created it, which is me thinking out aloud now, because I'm thinking I may not get in there with a sewing machine. So let's assume that this is some fabric that I'm using for that. So I've come back a couple weeks later and I'm getting ready to put in my additional page. I want to know that I can get my sewing machine down there. I think it'll work. See, my concern is there'll be heaps of tags and I'm going to have to roll up the one side. It'll be this side. I'm going to have to roll up this side to slide it through the sewing machine. So I'm just thinking out aloud here. I think I'd highly recommend that we create the 5th swinging page. I don't think it'll be an issue down the line that it's stitched in, because at the end of the day, it's just the fabric. It's not decorated. So yeah, I'm gonna I'm going to do that. I'm going to insert the 5th insert while we can get a sewing machine in here. So these guys would wait, and we do this one next. Okay, so I need to find some fabric that matches my book. These pieces that were left are just not quite the right size, but I might be able to Frankenstein them together to get what we need, because I think that would be pretty close. And then if the other piece comes in, I could do a join, because my slow stitch panels that will go in here won't be on this. Remember, there'll be felt here and it'll all be the same thickness, and I'll just have a blank page. I will then pretend this is a slow stitch, do all this needlework, and I will have this panel which will then sit on top, which will be easy enough to just slip stitch it into position at a later date. Okay, so another decision made. I'm going to create another page out of my scraps that are the measurements of the 11" by 17", so they're identical to these. It will be stitched in with the sewing machine, so it's ready to go. It'll have the felt. It won't be joined together because, yes, it can be joined together, but I probably won't, just in case I need to get my hand into the back here. So it'll just be stitched in with the sewing machine and the felt attached, but it will be left open just in case I need access. Okay, so there's a decision made. I need to create the 5th one, and then I can carry on, do the 3rd and do the 4th. Okay, so then they'll all be attached to a piece of fabric that is going to start to become the spine. Okay, so then I will be getting my book, and because it's the inside component to the spine, I'll then attach that to there with some glue, so that'll be glued down, and then the other side will have that attached like so. So now my pages will be attached to the cover. Okay, I won't do that at this stage because I've still got a lot more work to do on the inside. Once all that is glued and attached nice and strong, I can then have a creative piece added to here, so some slow stitch, and also the other side, and that'll cover this plus reinforce it and adhere it down. I may even put a piece of fabric in there anyway, just to make sure it's holding this nicely, and then my slow stitch piece will go on top of that. Yeah, I'll definitely do that. I think I need to ensure that this does not pull out, so I will be finding a piece of fabric to go here, the size of the cover, that'll stick that down, and the same on the other side, and then I can create my slow stitch pieces as time goes on and put them on the inside of the cover, plus of course the fifth signature, the one in the middle, can have its 2 decorative pieces added. So that then brings me to the spine. So let's pretend that that's now attached, and we've got this beautiful thick spine that is just full of stitching from the sewing machine with all the signatures. So we will see just some thin little lines, barely noticeable. So what I think I'll do then is get another piece of fabric the same size and create something decorative on the spine zone, the region through here, some slow stitch, and then hand stitch it onto this so that it's all connected, and then I can then attach the leftover fabric to the front of my cover. And I'll probably trim it back because I don't want to cover much of my cover, so let's assume it's only like 1 inch will appear on the cover. And then I might add some lace details or doily details or something along here as I decorate the cover a little bit. I don't want to lose the cover entirely, but there is a little bit of damage around, so I might use a bit of lace to protect some of the corners. Like this corner here is exposed, so we might pop a little bit of lace or doily around that just to protect it. Okay, so that's where we're at. It is a work in progress, but I think we're making progress. We've made a lot of decisions, and I think it's going to come together now nicely. So I will leave the video at that stage, and the next video will be how it's looking, and then starting to nut together how we do the cover and the spine and finish our book off. And then the following videos will be all about the pieces that we embroider to go into our 4 spots that we can have a little bit of creativity appear throughout the journal, just to highlight the tags. Okay, everyone, thank you very much for dropping into my channel. And if you want to stay on top of what we're doing here, don't forget to please subscribe, because that's just a great way for YouTube to send you a little update on the video and my progress, because this one is like a few weeks in between project. So it's not like the Jessie Chorley panel, which every Friday you get a video on that, because I'm working quite consistently on it. This one is just a pick up every so often project and do a little bit more. So please subscribe, and that way you will get notifications of when the next video is on the process. Okay, everyone, have a lovely day, and I will see you all soon. Bye-bye. Hello, everyone. I'm back. Just a quick little addition to my video. I went ahead and pinned down the remaining tags on the pages, ready to have the Velcro added to them. So in doing that, I realized I had a slight little issue. I got to the end and I had 4 tags extra. So it would appear that I cannot for the life of me write on a post-it note consecutive numbers 1 to 52. Somehow I've completely missed a post-it note that would have had 46, 47, whatever the numbers were. I can't recall now, but I got to the end and I'm like, why do I have all these tags left? So another decision due to an error being made in a really simple step. So which I think is quite hilarious, really, that I can't write consecutive numbers in a row. Anyway, as I said, my math is so-so at the best of times. So we've had to rethink a little bit, but it won't be an issue because we have that 5th page, or the creative page, in the middle of the spine. So it forced me to have a think about those creative pieces that I'm going to add to the journal at some point. So I went through all of the tags and picked out my favorite 4. Those 4 are going to be the theme and will be included on my creative page. So it'll sort of help tie it all together. And I actually think this is sheer brilliance, considering it was an error to start with. So I went back all my pieces and selected my favorite 4, because that's how many I had left when I got to the end of pinning them all down. Now, what I've done is I'll show you the pieces that I've pinned so far. So this is one of the panels, all pinned, just needing the Velcro. So that is done. Then I'll show you the 4 I selected from the range. So I'll just pop that out of the way. This is the next set of 12 on another page. And then the last one. Okay. So, which brings me to the 4 extras, which are setting the theme for my embroidery, as I just said. So I ended up picking these 2 purely because they're similar. So they're actually quite a few weeks apart, but they're similar. So I'm starting to think that that would make a beautiful elements to a slow stitch page. So on on the 5th, or the middle signature, which is blank, will be a element of slow stitch incorporating these 2 tags. So that got rid of 2 of the leftovers. Then I went back through again and I chose this little one. I just love it because I used a picture of a bird and then created a little nest
for some little eggs in there to sit, and it was all about using little scraps of yarn that threads week 29. So I created a nest, and I think this tag incorporated in a scene like a tree, all embroidered and with other little elements through it, might be a beautiful little tag to work with. So that's one of the tags I chose. Now, in addition, I did pick this one. So I know it doesn't really fit with this guy, but I do have the inside cover and the of the cover itself. So the inside back page and the inside front page. So I chose this one because I thought I could easily build more garden and more embroidery around this particular tag. And I just love these spring colors. Now it is using a lot of stitches, which was learnt through the whole process. So I think this tag by itself will be a gorgeous element to build around and really go back through all of the stitches I learnt. So that might be on the inside cover, for example, which would set the scene for the rest of the book. Now, because I've technically got 53 tags, which I've explained before, a group of stitches in Geelong, we're doing this project, and the leader purchased my PDF file of this rabbit. So then I said, as a little thank you, I would do a 53rd tag for the girls using that PDF file. So I have this additional tag, which is the 53rd. So I'm thinking on the back cover, using these more muted tones, I will do another garden scene showcasing everything I learnt from the project on the back. So these will be front and back of the journal in a slow stitch, and these will be on one of the pieces within the internals of it. Now, I'm going to say here I might change my mind and select, instead of these, but no, I love them. So these will definitely be on one of the pages and the little bird will be the other. So in the center, I will have a piece that sort of tones into those colors, and it'll match all of the doilies and bits and pieces that I also can use throughout this piece. So that's where I'm at. So a slight error, but easily fixed. And it has actually forced me to make some decisions about these creative pieces that I'm going to add in addition to my journal. Okay, I'll leave it at that. I will now get busy putting the remainder of my Velcro dots into position, and then everything is secure, and then I can stitch them with the sewing machine into the actual spine, and also, of course, put together that 5th panel, which is sitting in the center. I hope all that makes sense. I will leave you now in peace, and I will see you when I'm moving along with the project. Thank you. Bye.